We come together with our tired minds and bodies, with our confusion and questions and uncertainties and our fears. We come together with our hopes, with our pasts and our ideas, our passions and our faith. We come together bringing all who we are, trusting that in gathering we will be renewed, and that together we can create the world we long for. Oh, and I should have said, now please stand in body or spirit while we have our opening hymn, and that's hymn number 188, Come, Come, Wherever You Are.
So if you're looking at the hymnal, you may notice that this is a round. So what I'd like to do is to play it once, then we will sing it once all together, and then we'll split it up and sing it as a round. Absolutely beautiful. So what we'll do now, we'll consider this column over here to be group 1. You'll have to sing loud and proud. Group 2, 3, and a group of very fine singers over here in section 4. So we'll start with group 1. I will cue you in one at a time. We're all going to sing the same melody that we just learned. Here we are, group 1. And come, come, whoever. Group 2. Come, come, whoever. Group 3. Come, come, whoever. And group 4. We'll sing it again. Group 1. And come, come, whoever you are. And group 2. Group 3. Group 4. And we'll close here. Beautiful, everyone.
I couldn't see David say to stop singing, so I kept my group going longer than I was supposed to. I also didn't get peed on by a turtle this morning. I am just having such an on-point day. Ask me later if you want to know why. So I would like to share a circular breathing meditation that I do sometimes with you this morning on the theme of renewal and rest. This is a great thing to do when you are feeling tired but you need some more energy. Or if you've used a lot of energy and you've got more but you need to regenerate it. So I asked Barbara if she would help me with this because I think it's a little easier to tell what I'm saying if you can see something. But you don't need a partner to do this. You can do it all by yourself. Here, I'm gonna have you turn this way. There we go. So first I'll demonstrate with Barbara, and then we'll all practice it together, just sitting where you are for a moment or two. So what you're gonna start out with is you're gonna imagine a big bowl of energy in your pelvis. And you could imagine it as light or heat or water or flame or whatever it is that you imagine your energy as. And then you start by taking a deep breath in and you imagine that energy all going right up your spine to the top of your head. So deep breath in, you hold it for a second, and then you imagine it circulating right back down, breathing out into your belly. And then up, in, and out. Back into that bowl of energy right in your belly. Up, and down. And you just keep going and going, and that's it. That's all I needed help to demonstrate. But let's begin. Let's practice for a moment together. Breathing in and out. And in, all the way up to the top of your head, and out, back down your front to your belly, like a waterfall. Up and in. Pausing and down and out. In and up. Down and out. Keep going just for a moment by yourself. Thank you for practicing with me. Children and youth may go to their class or their bake sale preparation, whichever is appropriate, and we'll see you at coffee hour.
Each month, we select a partner for our offering outreach. That's a charity that we believe is doing worthy work in alignment with Unitarian Universalist principles. This month, our offering outreach partner is the Eastern Pennsylvania Trans Equity Project, EPTEP. The organization's services are focused on people who identify as transgender and gender expansive with no regard to race, economic status, or gender assigned at birth. EPTEP is an advocate for trans people in our local communities. They work to assist in a multitude of ways, including assisting in legal name changes, peer support groups, financial assistance for food and housing, gender-affirming garments, and prosthesis. Let me share an example of the work that EPTEP is doing. Brennig is a masculine identified person of color, and EPTEP helped Brennig receive a legal name change grant. They also provided him with another grant to assist with housing while attending college. And because of that, he now works for the Bethlehem School District, where he focuses his work on assisting LGBTQ youth as they navigate their schooling, and he's also an active volunteer for EPTEP. Please be generous in supporting the important work that this group is doing. If you're watching online and would like to contribute, follow the instructions that you see behind me on the screen and on your screens at home. And for those of you with us today, you can put cash in the baskets or you can make a cashless donation by scanning the QR code that's on your printed order of service. The offering will now be greatly received.
I change this all the time, so no wonder you didn't remember. That's fine. Folks, join me, if you would, please, in an affirmation of gratitude, which is printed in the order of service or on the screen. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
Candles of Community is our weekly ritual of sharing joys and concerns in the safe environment of our church community. Leslie and John Bass celebrated the 90th birthday of John's brother, Fred. This joyous reunion of family and friends took place on the 5th of June and the 6th in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. For Fred and the Bass family, we hold you in our hearts. Liz Blygan, I don't know if Liz is here today, but Liz would like to light a candle of joy for her husband, Kevin, who's been declared to be in full remission. Definitely something worth applauding for. For Kevin and Liz, we hold you in our hearts. I'd like to light a candle of joy for my daughter, Kara, my son-in-law, Joel, my granddaughter, Nora, and for Teddy and me. I think this photo tells you everything you need to know. Worth applauding for. And for the joys and concerns that are being held that are too deep for words, we light one more candle. Amen.
I thank you all for being here on such a warm day. I thought it was the last a couple of days. It's almost a week now. And I think of all those people who do not have shelter from the heat. Those people in this country who are mostly poor, the homeless. I think of the people in India who are dying from searing heat crossing the 120-degree Fahrenheit level. This is a time of great uncertainty. This is a summer that I'm sure will break records that were set last summer for heat. We are clearly in a time of some wandering. I begin, though, with a more hopeful story, a story that was related in Rebecca Solnitz's book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost. She tells the story of someone they called Turtle Man. Turtle Man would come to the same Zen monastery in Manhattan each Tuesday to sell the monks tins of chocolate and caramel turtles. Candy, which the monks actually really didn't like, but felt obliged to buy 2 tins every week, because Turtle Man was blind. And there was some compassion for the blind. But of course, Turtle Man was no dummy. Turtle Man knew that if he went to the monks every week, they'd buy at least 2 tins of turtles. One day, though, the abbot, being perhaps a little too suspicious than he should have been for his calling, decided he would follow Turtle Man. Is he really blind? So the abbot follows a good distance behind Turtle Man as he leaves the monastery, and he's tapping his way along the streets. He comes to a corner, sort of weaves back and forth, and then goes around the corner on the sidewalk and taps for a while, taps again, another corner, and yet another corner. Realizing that he's made a circle, Turtle Man comes to a crossing. And then Turtle Man stops on the corner. This was before audible walking signs. And what Turtle Man does next is quite remarkable. He just stands there, and softly says, "Help, help, help," until someone comes, takes his arm, and walks him across the street. The abbot was beside himself at this point, certainly feeling a bit ashamed about his doubts about the turtle man wandering for a moment there in the world that is very different than our world. Of course, the monk understood now more and more why Turtle Man would go to the same locations week after week to sell the turtles, because he had realized the route and knew it, but even then he would get lost. What the abbot realized is that the Turtle Man lived his life in a world that was different than his. Is different than his world of sight, and different than his world of certainty and knowing. And he wondered how many of us wander with our sight, or perhaps should wander more with our sight. At the end of the day, no matter where you are wandering, you still need help. You will need help when you wander. Getting lost is not so much a matter of geography as it is identity. The desire, indeed, perhaps the need to shake off the shackles of mediocrity and remind ourselves of who we are and why we need one another. We come together at a time of great struggle in our country and in our world. And while we stand at what is still the threshold of summer, we know that it is hard to relax. With the specter of the critical election in the fall, the temperatures scorching as they are now, we have still managed in this congregation to have done so much in 1 year. I will tell you, it's rather amazing that it's been a year. It has flown by. For me, I don't know about you, but we seem to be at the threshold of something even greater. But we don't exactly know what the greater is. Oh, we have plans. Remember the 5-year plans? Those of you who've been in church life long ago, they make the 5-year long-term plan, and then we put it up on a shelf and forget about it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the liminal space in which we wander ourselves, whether personally in our lives or whether as a congregation. Because in this year, we have renewed for ourselves the sense of community and belonging that is so critical to our identity as faithful people. And I can't begin to tell you how thankful I am, and I know Francis is as well, that each of you in your own way has found a way to become a part of us again, whether here in the room or whether online. Because you see, when you're a part of us, we grow in strength, and we are renewed again and again and again. And even when time seems so dark and we seem so lost, having someone call us on the phone, send us a text, even an email, or show up on a Sunday and give a hug, that truly is what this is all about. As I was sitting here with Dawn Starr and we were talking about the year and what had gone on, and I said, well, it's a little hard to get him in this morning, and she said, yes, it is. And then I said, you know, maybe we should have church out there. That's where the energy is. The energy is in the atrium. And that's because you bring the energy in, and what you are doing now is you are relating to one another, and in that relationship, you are renewing yourselves. Because I believe that if we have a theology at all, that theology rests in the relationships we keep with one another, in the relationships to the causes we care about, to the values we embrace. I believe that what makes us stronger together is always going to be together. However we manage that community, whether it is in person or online, this is a congregation that has survived the pandemic and that has grown even stronger since then. Helping one another and being in the presence of one another is the covenant of renewal. It is the theology of inclusion. It is the relationships we need to keep building over and over again, to bring all kinds of people here. And I, for one, have stopped worrying so much about who's not here. As Francis will tell me, it doesn't matter who's not there. It matters who's there. You're here. You're there online. We are together in a sense that builds a sense of community that is not easy to replicate in a world as fractured as ours is. But in order to do the good work that we've been doing this year and to continue it into the next year, we're all going to need a break. I need a break. I definitely need a break. I love you, but I need a break. So what I'm going to do is be away for a while. I made some commitments this summer before I took the job here last year. So I'm going to be gone for about 8 weeks, which is longer than I would normally. In that time, we've got Bill over here, Reverend Bill Cluley, who will be managing our pastoral care. Please feel free to reach out to him. Call our pastoral care line of the church. Someone will get back to you. We're building new things. While I'm gone, the parking lot's going to get redone. The whole parking lot's going to get redone. We're going to fix the roof. We're going to fix the patio outside the doors there. We may do a couple of other things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go first to England, where we've been going for the last 3 years. We have a daughter there, and we're going to go visit, and that'll be fun. But we also spend time in the seaside town of Brighton. Like its name suggests, it is a really happy place. All my daughters call it Francis's happy place. She just gets this energy about her that is pretty hard to surpass the energy she has here, which is saying a lot, I gotta tell you. We'll spend some time there. Francis and I have been writing a book. We're in our 3rd year of doing it, and it's coming along. You know, it's Brighton. There's great coffee houses. There's the beach. I don't need to say any more. But what Brighton also is creative. It's full of young people. There's 2 big universities there, the University of Brighton and the University of Sussex, as well as an art scene that I haven't really seen very much of around the States. The art scene, the theater scene, but most of all, we go there to visit a church. We wandered in a church the first summer we were there. Towards the end of our visit, we've been going to the Unitarian church, which is right downtown in the middle of this square, a beautiful place. But I have to tell you, brothers and sisters, our cousins there were not doing it. The doors were closed, and there was a sign that said, "No buskers, service in progress." No buskers means no panhandling. I was like, that's not very friendly. And the music was not like our music. And there were like 12 people. I did my best. I did my duty. I tried to go there. And then I heard about this church that's on the suburbs on the edge of town. I think I've told you about this before. And we wandered up the hill to this church, and we walked in this old Gothic church, and there are kids running around everywhere, behind the podium, on top of the piano. I think you all would have a hard time with it. I did actually, and my initial reaction was, someone get those kids under control. And then I realized that's their vibe. That's who they are. And their minister, Dave Steele, gets up. He's a middle-aged guy wearing cargo shorts and a t-shirt and a beard. Seems like they all wear beards. And he just leads the service in a way that thing where I ask you to talk to one another, that's his thing. And there's an entire movement, I found out, in the UK, because they're a little farther along the decline than we are. Their people really stopped going to church. So now what you see happening in these old Gothic churches is energy. They're bringing kids in ways that we have to learn from. They use the space in different ways. They have an espresso bar in the back. Psst. I mean, I walked in the first time and the greeter said, "Would you like a cappuccino?" I said, "Cappuccino? Well, don't mind if I do. I'll have a cappuccino." And I find out from Dave later that it's a jobs program. They train baristas for free there. So I mentioned this idea to our building team here, and Ron got very excited about the cappuccino machine out in the atrium there and said we should put one of those in. And anyway, that's an ongoing debate. But the point was, they were doing things differently, and I want to learn more about that, so I'll spend time doing that. I'll also spend time renewing my spiritual direction. There's a formal program I go through. I'm a certified spiritual director. And I want to renew that work. I did that 3 or 4 years ago. I want to renew that work so that I can bring new ideas to you, new senses of what it is to be a spiritual person in a progressive community such as ours. We will return in early August to visit some family, a few moves in the family that we have to help folks with. And then I'll be back late August and ready to go. I want to commend to you any time that you can take off. And by the way, I'm very thankful that I'm able to do this as a minister. I know from my other colleagues in other faiths, they don't have this option. I've never taken sabbaticals. I took one once for a month, and that didn't work. I had to go back. So I just try to take a month off here and there. But I want to commend to you the idea of rest and renewal wherever you can find it, even if it's for a day. I want you to think about even the possibility of turning off your devices for a day. You know that sinking feeling you have when you've left in your car and you realized you left your cell phone at home? We need to push back on that a little bit. We don't need to feel that depth of attachment. There's a wonderful book out there called Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hershey. Anybody heard of this book? Nobody here? Okay, well, good book to read. It's a manifesto. It's a manifesto. She's a minister. Not a UU minister, I wish she was. It's a manifesto against what she calls grind culture. That everything we're doing in sense of productivity, and even if we're retired, we're doing productivity, we're making things happen, we're seeing things to completion. She says that's not necessarily a good thing. She founded something called the NAP ministry, N-A-P. That's a wonderful idea. She goes around and preaches about the spiritual power of naps. And we chuckle about that because we think, oh, that's nice. But in fact, she says, that may actually be what we need to do. That other cultures, such as Latin cultures, have realized that the siesta is something that is vital to their survival. In her words, the rest is resistance framework does not believe in the toxic idea that we are simply resting to recharge and rejuvenate so that we can bring more output to capitalism. What we have internalized as productivity has been informed by capitalist, ableist, patriarchal systems. And she says our drive and obsession to always be in a state of productivity leads us to a path of exhaustion, guilt, and shame. She says we falsely believe we're not doing enough and that we must always be guiding our lives towards more and more and more labor so we can buy more and more things. The distinction that must be repeated as many times as necessary is this, she says. We are not resting to be productive, we are resting because it is a divine right to do so. Part of our renewal this summer will be to rest a bit as a congregation. We'll still be open for business, except for the week that we seem to all be in Varfalva. But more than that, I want you to contemplate what's happened this year if you've been involved. Think about what you need to be deeper, more spiritual people. I've noticed, as I've thought about this, that what we have now and the troubles that we're having in the world are part of a breaking down of an old paradigm. The old saw goes that in order to get to a breakthrough, you have to break down. We've all known the breakdown. Every single one of you in this room has had a breakdown. But what I'd like us to think about is how this is leading us to what I hope is a new normal in our lives. Because the old normal wasn't really working so well, my friends. Racism, the growing gap between the rich and the poor, the degradation of the planet, the epidemics. Make America great again? When was that exactly? And now we seem to be moving through this breakdown. We're not done yet. I know all of us feel a lot of anxiety about the fall. But I believe we will. And I believe that regardless of what happens, even in the election, something new is going to grow out of this. There may be more breakdown before we get the breakthrough. I've talked to you about this before. I think we're on the cusp of something really fundamental, that every 500 years or so, there's a great cultural and spiritual shift in the world. And I believe we're in the middle of that right now. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes decades. And I believe it begins with the breaking down so that we can get to the breaking through. There's spirits, I think, in our lives that give us glimmers of hope. They're like seeds floating down through the air into the ashes of our breakdown, new ways of being religious and new ways of happening that includes the virtual media, not just Zoom, but in other ways. The telemedicine movement that's thriving in Asia right now, and insurance plans for poor farmers in Africa that pays the dividend as soon as a drought is announced. And I've seen these seeds in other people too. I've seen these seeds among you where you say to me, well, I have this new idea, and I don't know, it's a crazy idea. And well, tell me about your idea. And when I hear about your idea, I think, that's a great idea. I was just talking to someone last week. Next year, be thinking about ways that you would like to innovate, ways that you would like to bring new ideas and bring them forward. And we're going to set up a process by which we can help that, make that happen. Because as my old evangelical preacher said to me back in my late 40s, he said to me, John, I don't know about you Unitarians, but you've got to set free the ministry in them. That's what I want to do. I want to set it free because I know it's in there. And I know that we will survive this apocalypse. Now, that word apocalypse scares a lot of people. It's the end of the world. That's what we think it is. But the word only actually means a complete reversal, a change. If you do tarot cards, it's the hanging man. It's the wheel. It's death. It means there's something new that's coming out of it. And we've survived apocalypses before, my friends. In the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages, there was unbearable suffering. The 14th century in Europe saw a population collapse of 50%. 50%, mostly poor people and women. And after the darkness of that period, the pandemics, the famines, the wars, came the Renaissance. The Renaissance, which, by the way, wasn't the Renaissance for all people. But overall, rights and wages for workers rose. Serfdom slowly came to an end. Infant survival tripled. By the late 15th century, life expectancy had risen from 34 years to 54 years. We're in a pivot moment, my friends. Ruth DeFries, in her book, The Big Ratchet, talks about human history ratcheting up populations, culture, technology, until it reaches a breaking point in the old paradigm. And the hatchet comes down, we pivot again. And this is what happened in the Roman Empire. This is what happened in the warring states of China, the plague, the Holocaust, and now we are in the midst of another one. What happens every time is that humanity has to pivot to a new order, another Renaissance. The question is, how are we going to pivot as a species? How are we going to pivot as a people? How are we going to pivot as a congregation of faith? Are we going to move further along our path of moving from surviving to thriving? This is a deeply spiritual question. I've wrestled in recent years with how we're going to do this as a religious movement. Just yesterday, I was watching the debate on the Article 2, this new idea of love at the center of our values. And all I heard from the con mics was, well, we're giving up our principles. Not giving up your principles. We still have the 8, 9, 7, whatever number of principles you want. We're adding to it in another framework, a framework that's more inclusive, that welcomes people who are different than the status quo. That's what we have to do. We need to look and see how we can cultivate the values of humanity and caring and love like we've been doing, like we will do even more. It's essential that we reorder our lives in ways that welcome other people, truly welcome them for the first time. There's a model in social change known as the Tuckman model. When a life-changing event happens, such as we're living through now, those organizations that thrive, that respond well, go through a process known as forming. They begin to see the world and their organization in different ways. And then, of course, there's the pushback, right? There should be pushback. Tradition should push back. And then there's a bit of conflict. Make no mistake about it, there will be conflict. Comes with the territory. I'm not worried about it. Conflict means that there's a new system pushing forward. This is known as storming, forming and then storming. And then what happens as we work through that and we all kind of get on the same page again, we do something called norming, where the new reality becomes more normal. And in there we need to rest a bit, which is what this summer is for me. I think this first year has been a lot of forming and some storming. There'll be some more storming. But we're going to get to the norming pretty soon. And then in a couple of years, I think this congregation will be performing like they've never performed before. And that's it. The forming, the storming, the norming, the performing. It starts very small, friends. It starts very small. I love of the many Gospels. The Gospel of Matthew and the parable of the mustard seed is one of my favorite, in which Jesus is purported to have said, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. And though it is the smallest of all seeds, I don't know if you've ever actually seen a mustard seed, it's teeny. Yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants, and it becomes a tree so the birds can come and perch in its branches. Here is the good news. The good news is the seeds are already floating down among us right here, right now. We are finding a way for the weary to rest, and those who want to find a mission in life are finding a mission in life, and that is the purpose of why we are here, and we will continue next year. What we do makes a lot of difference in a lot of lives, not to hunker down and wait for the worst to pass, but to open ourselves up to the truth, to the reality that there is something more here than we've ever seen before. And I believe, and this may scare you a bit, that regardless of who is elected president, our work will still be more urgent than ever. Can I get an amen? But starting today and throughout the summer, I need you to renew. I need to renew, you need to renew. We need to let the Spirit rest for a moment so that we can begin the work, the good work, not the capitalist work, the good work. I close with this beautiful poem by Jan Richardson. If you stand at the edge of this blessing and call down into it, you will hear your words return to you. If you lean in and listen close, you will hear this blessing give the story of your life back to you. Quiet your voice, quiet your judgment, quiet the way you always tell your story to yourself. Quiet all these and you will hear the whole of it, the hollows of it, the spaces in the telling and the gaps when you hesitate to go on. Sit at the rim of this blessing. Press your ear to its lip, its sides, its curves. They were carved out long ago by those whose thirst drove them deep, those who dug into the layers of the world and their lives with their hands, as common as mud and as useful as clay. Rest yourself beside this blessing, and you will begin soul. Still yourself, and you will feed it rising within you. Fill every emptiness, springing forth something new, now and always. Now, friends, our service truly begins. Our closing hymn is number 359, When We Are Gathered. Please rise in body or spirit. I close with these words from Denise Levertroff. But we've only begun to love the earth. We've only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How can we tire of hope? So much is still in bud. Good day and blessings.